Today's morning coffee vinyl side, Olivia Newton-John, Have You Ever Been Mellow, 1975. This, Olivia Newton-John's fifth studio LP, was released in February of 1975, almost the exact same day that Led Zeppelin released Physical Graffiti. Other notable albums released that year were Patti Smith's Horses, Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here, Springsteen's Born to Run, and Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. The number one album that year was the Eagles' One of These Nights, but there were many others, including releases by Joni Mitchell and Joan Baez, Heart's Dreamboat Annie, Bowie's Young Americans. It was a pretty good year. But right up there, right beside them all, on the pop and country charts, and peaking at the top of Billboard's Top 200 was this album. It even beat out the Eagles for an American Music Award. Now, if you struggle like I do to reconcile the world where this album exists alongside some of the albums I listed, even outselling and outperforming them on the charts, let me see if I can help you. In grades 11 and 12, I had what is known as a frenemy. His name was Redacted. His name was in fact not redacted, but my wife made me take out his real name, which I've reluctantly done. So, Redacted was a new student in our school who was welcomed into our friend circle and immediately started triangulating himself within the various relationships of our long-established group. He and I were particularly at odds over this. Now, Redacted was known for three things. He, at 16, had already cultivated a signature mustache. Now, it wasn't an impressive or imposing stash, but it wasn't a wispy no-stash either, so I'll give him that. He was very proud of that stash. He was also very proud of his gray leather jacket, which to my recollection I never saw him without. He was also the only one of us that had a car. Now, like all of us, Redacted loved music too. And the two bands that were at the top of his musical pantheon were old school Aerosmith, this was before their 80s and 90s comeback, and Led Zeppelin. And by memory, he loved Physical Graffiti most of all. Now, one day I was driving with Redacted in his car, a two-tone brown mid to late 70s Plymouth Arrow, and he asked me to pick out some music. So I reached underneath the passenger seat to pull out the case of cassettes he kept in the car, to be greeted in horror. The whole case was filled with very light pop music, and not just your typical Whitney Houston, Sade, Wham kind of thing, but all kinds of throwaway dreck and drivel that we wouldn't have been caught dead listening to, let alone traveling around with a case in our car. It was an abomination. And he looked over and laughed. No, the other one. There was another case under the car seat as well, full of Zeppelin, Van Halen, Aerosmith, Rush, ZZ Top. I gave him my best Gary Coleman, "What you talking about, Willis?" side-eye. "It's for the chicks, man. It's for the chicks," he said. "Whenever I'm going to have a chick in the car, I bring that one." Now, the very idea of it repulsed me, but I have to admit, in its own way, it was some kind of genius. I shook my head knowing it was something I could never do. Redacted was that guy, and I could never be that guy. Now, if it had been 1976 instead of 1986, this Olivia Newton-John album could very well have been in that case of cassettes underneath Redacted's passenger seat. This idea is how I reconcile the idea that this album existed in the same world as Physical Graffiti, Born to Run, and Horses. It's all a matter of what case is under the car seat. Now, there's a few pleasant ditties here, including Olivia Newton-John's cover of Air That I Breathe, but for the most part, it's largely forgettable, much like a diet soft drink. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not as musically tribal as I was when I was a kid. I listen to everything because I'm curious about it all. That said, I've never stashed a case of cassettes under my car seat as some sort of grift to get with a lady. I've only seen that happen one other time and place, in Thailand, when I watched a guy try the same maneuver on some girls using Kenny G as his door opener, so to speak. But that's another story for another day.